Okay, I'm going to officially call us to order. Take a roll call if you want. I'm going to try to say Phoebe Golden. Can you help us with that?
Yes, of course. All right, committee member Wall.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Simon.
You'll have to use your mic. So the Martin, it's so hard when you're distant. You know.
I know. I apologize.
No, it's not.
Simon is here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, committee member Foster, not present yet. Committee member Alden.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Ruiz.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Johnson.
Here.
Thank you all for being here.
We go to the salute of the flag. You want to help us out?
Sure.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
like the short hairs.
Hey, Martin. We'll go to open time for public comment regarding non-agenda items.
Okay.
Anyone wishing to speak on non-agenda items, we recognize at this time. Speakers will be limited to about 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the chair. The committee may not take action on these items as they are not on the agenda. The public will be given an opportunity to speak on each agenda item below at a time it is called. Do we have anybody online?
Not have anyone online, and we didn't get any emailed public comments.
Approval of the meeting minutes of December 19, 2022 meeting. It's attached to your agenda packet. Did anybody have any comment to them? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move. I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 I think that passed unanimously. General business, we have a presentation and discussion of MCE Clean Energy Agency and programs. And I think this is going to be really important for us. Personally, a big fan of MCE. I'm one of your customers. And welcome to our little group here. Thank you for making the time to see us. And Phoebe, is there any lead up you want to give?
Not more than you said. We have Sebastian Kahn with us this evening, and he's going to be giving an overview of MCE programs and how it relates to Corte Madera. So yeah, switches at the top. And thank you for being here, Sebastian.
Great. Well, thank you for having me, committee members, and thank you, Phoebe, for the introduction. It's really great to be back here. It's been a little while since I presented to the Corte Madera Climate Action Committee. I know we've met in various capacities over the past couple of years, and there's some new faces here, so I wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Sebastian Kahn. I'm a senior community development manager at MCE. And what that means is that I am your liaison to all things and anything MCE. So really want to explore collaborative partnership opportunities between our agency and you at the town of Corte Madera, and what are ways in which we can be partnering and working together. So going to give a quick presentation this evening, and then hopefully have some time for Q&A too and roundtable and see what questions you all might have. But just to break things down a little bit, for some of you, this is going to be repeat information. For some of you, it will be very familiar, but I will do just a quick introduction to MCE and the work that we do, both for your benefit and for anybody from the public that may be joining. And then also wanted to respond to some of the requests that I heard at your last meeting in December with regard to deep green adoption in Corte Madera and kind of what that looks like, questions about electrification and reliability and the state of the grid and how we provide power to residents and businesses within Corte Madera. And then importantly, I really want to focus on what are some of the tangible customer program outcomes that we can take advantage of together here in Corte Madera. And of course, welcome your feedback on that as well. So we'll go ahead and dive in. Who is MCE? So we are a not-for-profit public agency. We're California's first community choice aggregation program. And I think since we met last with this committee, our mission and vision statements have changed just a little bit. So I wanted to outline them here. Our mission is to confront the climate crisis by eliminating fossil fuel greenhouse gas emissions, producing renewable energy, and creating equitable community benefits. And our vision is to lead California to an equitable, clean, affordable, and reliable energy economy by serving as a model for community-based renewable energy, energy efficiency, and cutting-edge clean tech products and programs. So hopefully this message resonates with you all as members of the committee. I think we share some similar values here, which is great. But just a quick primer on community choice aggregation in California. This came out of a movement in the early 2000s. There was enabling legislation through Assembly Bill 117 that at the absolute highest level said, if cities and counties, municipalities want to come together and aggregate the load of all of their customers within a city, they can do that and form a joint powers authority, which acts as a means to purchase and procure energy on behalf of residents. So this was something that was explored in Marin County beginning in the late 2000s, and we began serving customers here in 2010. Just in Marin, we've expanded quite a bit since then. We serve 37 communities across the Bay Area, over 4 different counties. And while we were the first community choice aggregator in the state of California, there's now over 23 different active CCAs throughout the state. We're serving about 40% of all of the investor-owned utilities load. So really an incredible way. We've come since 2010, and I think a lot of that, we owe to our community advocates and folks that really push for this here in Marin County. So you all can be proud of that. There's a strong footprint of that community energy here in Marin that has carried out throughout the state. So at a basic level, how electric service works. So agencies like MCE, under the community choice model, buy and build clean energy for our customers. PG&E is still involved in that process. They deliver the electricity via transmission and distribution lines. PG&E continues to address service outages and acts as the billing agent. But the end result for the customer is they have more choices over where their energy is coming from. So they can be with MCE, or they can opt out and go back to PG&E service. It's in the name, community choice aggregation. We want to ensure that customers have that choice. And we think choice is power. And here's a couple different options that folks have. I'm going to get into the deep green piece and why you'll see at the top that is now our standard service. But there are 3 different options to choose from. So you can opt up to 100% renewable electricity through MCE. We do have a 60% renewable profile via our light green products. And then, of course, again, highlighting that customer choice, folks do have the opportunity to opt out and remain with PG&E, which is a 49% renewable product as of this point in time. But I know deep green has always been an area of interest for members of this committee. And how do we continue to get folks to adopt deep green and opt up to 100% renewable energy? What's important for this group to know is that there have been some exciting policy changes at MCE that are going to enable us to serve more customers throughout our service area with that deep green product. And I'm going to highlight that here today. So in August of last year, our board authorized deep green as the new default service option for all new customer accounts. And as this group is familiar, deep green is our 100% renewable service option. Across the board throughout our 4 counties, it has a participation rate of about 2%. It's pretty low relative to our light green products. And here in Corte Madera, we're looking at about a 5.3, 5.4% adoption rate, meaning that of all the MCE customers, only 5% of them approximately are enrolled in Deep Green. That's going to change quite a bit this year under this new pilot program that our board adopted. So what we are doing is for all new customer accounts that start service with MCE. So let's say you're opening a new brick and mortar business or you're moving addresses, anything that would trigger you opening a new PG&E account, that will automatically be enrolled in MCE service. And it's a 1-year pilot. So started taking place in January, a couple of weeks back. And we're going to see how this goes over the course of the year, but we're expecting about 8,500 new customers a month to be enrolled in Deep Green throughout the first pilot. And really, I think a key component of MCE's work as an agency has been to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants associated through the power sector. And it's been a long-term goal of MCE to get to 100% renewable energy. And this is just one way that we're actualizing that. So really excited about this pilot. Do you want to talk about to whom this applies and kind of how it's going to play out within the community? So this will be affecting all new residents and businesses beginning January 1st. Again, as I mentioned, there's no action needed, so folks will automatically be enrolled in that Deep Green product. Yes.
This is a lot of material, and I'm just wondering if we want to take it in chunks,
Sure.
or do you want to wait for questions at the end?
Whatever's easy for you.
Because I think we're going to have time, and I think it's really important. So it seems like this is a kind of a segue here.
Sure.
So I'm interrupting, but does anybody have any questions so far?
I do.
Yeah, maybe could we chunk it?
Yeah,
A
let's
little
do that.
bit.
So if it's okay with the committee, what I would say is maybe we address this as the Deep Green portion. We can take the electrification and reliability piece and then take the customer programs as a separate piece. So
Cool.
great.
Okay, so you've got a PG&E grid that, let's say it's near maximum capacity. How would you dole that out or portion it out to those customers? So is there enough Deep Green available? If everybody signed up for Deep Green, what happens to the rest of it?
That's a great question. So the way that it works now is, and I think it'll be more evident in the second portion of the presentation when I talk about the ways in which we procure power for our communities. So if we could hold that question until that portion,
Okay.
that would be my suggestion, and I'll
Okay.
be able to address it with more context.
Okay.
So I have a question. So Deep Green, Corte Madera is at 5.4%. I'm just curious how this compares to other jurisdictions in Marin.
It's about average for Marin. The highest we see is in the town of Fairfax. They hover around, off the top of my head, like high 9%, like 9.7%.
Okay.
It's a pretty average for Marin communities, I would say.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then it's exciting that it will be a standard offering. And so it sounds like 8,500 new customers for the year.
That's per
Per
month.
month?
Yeah.
Okay. So do we know what that might look like in terms of Corte Madera? Like how much that might take our 4.5%?
Yeah, it's a little hard to say in terms of percentages right now. What we typically see, and I'll use a new community inclusion process as a reference point. So we brought on the city of Fairfield as our newest member community this past calendar year. We saw about 10% of residents opt out of MCE. So 90% of that city has remained with MCE light green service. We're using that 10% as kind of a baseline to say, okay, potentially folks at that rate will opt out, and some folks will continue to stay with Deep
Right.
Green, which is great. So it's a little bit challenging to say what that percentage will look like for Corte Madera specifically, but we're kind of using that 10% benchmark with how we're thinking about folks that might say, okay, this is not for me. I want to opt out and return to PG&E service.
Okay, so the number that we're missing is like how many people are moving into Corte Madera and or moving households that would
Correct.
trigger the PG&E.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
The question?
No.
Great.
Martin, did you have any?
Well, I was just going to say that it'd be interesting to know how many people we expect, or households we expect to be moving in and out of Corte Madera annually. And then one of the actions for us could be to promote deep green, just to encourage new residents just to take it, to accept it, and pointing out I mean, presuming that the financial differential remains about what it is, that it's not that much more, or in fact, it may be even less than if you go for the PG&E route. So that's all I would say. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, committee member Wall. You're right. It is more or less at parity with PG&E's 49% renewable service. We're anticipating the average residential customer to have about $1.40 on average added to their bill by opting up to deep green. And to your earlier point, I think that there still is an element of behavior change for folks that are not changing addresses, right? For folks that live in Corte Madera, that have been in their residence for a long time, that still want to say, hey, I want to take that extra step and opt up to deep green. I'm happy to collaborate with this committee on what that might look like, but did just want to call out for the purposes of today's meeting, this new policy change. And I think we can work together to see if there are opportunities to encourage that other subset of customers that may want to opt up as well.
Great.
Martin, did you have anything else?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Thanks for obliging. Should we go on to the next?
Yeah, sure. The only other thing I wanted to,
Lauren?
oh,
I had one more question.
Yeah.
No, so I know that we've had a discussion in the past about light green, right? Is that going to go increase from 65% and get closer to 100% mark?
it is, I know, as it's been outlined in our integrated resource plan, the goal is to get to 85% renewable by 2029.
Okay, so got it.
It's gradual.
Okay.
As more renewable resources come online.
So the push is deep green. We've got to get people to deep green.
At least for now, for the pilot program. Yeah, I think this will give us some valuable data to figure out, what's resonating with customers and what's not over the course of this year. But it is just one tool in the toolkit I think we're using to get to that, higher threshold of renewable energy across our service area.
Yeah. And I think it's a no-brainer. It's just a matter of, we've tried in the past, so we'll have to think through how we generate awareness.
Mhm.
So just sort of my own edification and clarification here. The plan in a couple of years ago was to have the entire delivery 100% renewable. And I understand that the integrated resource process has changed the strategy a little bit. So if you're doing the pilot program and it's just for new accounts that are being set up, do you want us to be really pushing deep green adoption now? Or is that a strategy that we should really work on and discuss and roll out at some point in the future where it works with the integrated resource plan and what we're seeing in terms of new accounts coming in, new building coming in our town and the whole county, but certainly we're focused on Corte Madera. Does that?
It does, yeah. And I would leave that to the committee's discretion, and hopefully I can provide some context here. That's always welcomed. For you all to encourage deep green adoption. I think we're the real, because this is a big shift, right? This is a new policy change that we're making. And I think in terms of real tangible impacts that this committee can be making, I would encourage you to focus efforts more on the customer program side of thing that I'll get into later.
Okay.
Of where we can actually achieve some real greenhouse gas emissions within Corte Madera. Acknowledging that this is going to make things on the residential side, there's going to be a higher adoption rate with deep green already.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's go on.
Thank you. The only other comment I had before moving on from the deep green piece is that we know that energy costs disproportionately affect lower income and vulnerable populations. And so what we're doing as part of this change is that for all of our customers that are enrolled in CARE and FARA, which are the programs that help with bill relief throughout the state, we are subsidizing that cost of the premium that they'd be paying to opt up to Deep Green. So for the course of this pilot, those folks will not be paying the additional surcharge for Deep Green. They would be paying the equivalent of what a light green rate would be. So one of the many things we're doing at MC to hopefully address community equity in a meaningful way. Okay, and we'll go ahead and move on to the electrification and reliability piece, and hopefully committee member Simon, this will address some of your questions with regard to the grid and kind of how we're planning for long-term power purchasing. I know that the county of Marin and many of our member communities, Corte Madera included, went through an extensive process this past year to update their building codes, and some communities went above and beyond and established REACH codes to encourage all electric new infrastructure. And MCE was a member of the steering committee with the county that helped field a lot of those questions from member communities. And one of the top questions that sustainability staff and planners at the county and throughout our jurisdictions were getting is, can the grid provide this energy, right? Like how can electric providers like MCE, like PG&E account for that new demand? And so what I want to get into a little bit is what MCE does as a generation provider, providing energy for the residents and businesses of Corte Madera, how we account for that and kind of what that looks like. So again, as the generation provider for Corte Madera, just want to illustrate how we meet customer demand. And the important thing I think for this committee to remember is that MCE is already planning for electrification in our long-term energy forecasting. This is something we're already doing. And load serving entities, that's an industry term, but you can think electricity providers, we forecast that demand years in advance. On an annual basis, we post what's called our operational integrated resource plan, which outlines over a 10-year planning period where we are procuring additional energy resources and where we are investing our revenues to purchase power on behalf of our communities. And I think the important thing to remember as well is that these include things about load forecasts based on the number and types of customers that we serve, based on whether it's new residences we're seeing coming in, new businesses, new industry, new agriculture, trends in electrification, accounting for what our communities are doing across the board. And of course, grid reliability needs and capacity requirements, including various different regulatory mandates. And I think one thing to remember too is that because REACH codes by and large are geared towards new construction, and in some cases, retrofits and renovations of buildings, there's going to be time for us to gradually think about how we procure that additional load. So it's not happening all at once, that would create kind of a different scenario. But because that's not the case, I think it gives all electricity providers more time to think through how they can contract in a meaningful way with developers. And I think one other thing to consider, in addition to some of the long-term load fast forecasting, another important consideration is that MCE, yes.
I was just trying to do that. Yes, thank you. I think I have to do it on the other computer, actually.
While you're doing that.
Can you turn it on?
It only
You're
gives
not
me,
controlling
since I'm on my computer, it doesn't give me the ability to.
All right, yes. Keep going and I'll work on it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Drink some water here while things are getting situated.
What is the Y scale there? Is it megawatts or?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. So what we're looking at here is just a graph of our long-term forecasting. And what I want to call out is that in addition to some of the long-term planning we're making, there's a process in the state of California called resource adequacy, which basically tells MCE and other electricity providers that we need to contract enough generating capacity to meet 118% of expected peak demand on a monthly basis. So in the event of a flex alert, like we saw last summer when there's really increased demand on the grid, there's an ability to pull from those additional resources to meet that increased demand. And really, to give an analogy, I kind of think of resource adequacy as like an emergency savings account that a person would contribute to. So ideally, you're contributing to an emergency fund on a monthly basis, and you're not touching that money, but in the event that you need it, it's there. And I think you can think of resource adequacy in a similar way. So we pay electricity generators for a power reserve. And in the event of a grid emergency, it serves as a way for us to address the need for that additional demand. Ensuring reliability on the grid and providing a power reserve to the state during those peak times. Not only does it act as kind of that reserve policy and helping us maintain power, but it also incentivizes the siting and construction of new resources needing for future grid reliability. So that is that.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think we have a couple questions. Was that, did you have more on that?
No, we can
Cool.
take questions.
Can you,
Yeah.
yes, stay on that for a
Yeah.
moment.
And thank
So-
you for adjusting the screen for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Who are all the whizzes that all our whizzes.
Thank
Okay,
thank
so
Lorena and Adam.
so I'm looking at the net energy metering band that actually seems to move more than the others. And I'm curious about the CPUC's and the IOU's effect on net energy metering. And if you can explain that a little bit, that would be really helpful, because I find that, very concerning, and I don't know how to explain it to people.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what's been shared by the IOUs about why they wanted it, but I don't see it as a benefit in terms of expanding net energy metering. So help.
Yeah, I think so. Full disclosure, I in my role have not been involved in those proceedings at the CPUC, and I would be happy to get language for this committee so that you can share that with your audiences and the public in a way that makes sense and is digestible. So hearing that need loud and clear, and can support with that as well. But I don't have an immediate answer for you right now.
Does that include explaining what net energy metering actually is?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right.
So net energy metering is the specific tariff that a solar customer is on. So the idea being that if you have solar installed on a rooftop or a carport or whatever it is, you are generating on-site solar. And
Okay, so this is, okay, I get it. It's what's being generated on the rooftops, if you will.
exactly, yes.
Okay.
And it's the accounting mechanism that we use at MCE and at PG&E to to account for what's being used on site versus what is being exported to the grid.
Okay. I think maybe we need to clarify that we're talking about power purchasing here, which is great. And I'm glad to see we do more than, say, Texas does, so that we're not left in the chill. But the other side of this, of course, is what PG&E does. And this is where I think we're going to run into we already have run into blowback on this when we talk about building electrification is, oh my gosh, we need to upgrade the grid. We can't handle the demand or this is how we meet demand is what you're talking about from a power supply standpoint. What about from the power delivery standpoint? And if you're going to get into that, that's great.
I'm not going to get into that today. I'm focused on the generation side of things as the generation provider for
Okay,
the community. But I hear the concerns, and I think that there have been a couple different things put out there recently. Even just yesterday, there was an article in Cal Matters that was talking about, the need to expand renewable energy infrastructure across the state, to expand transmission capacity across the state, and really to encourage electric vehicle drivers to charge during off-peak hours. So
right.
not putting the constraint on the grid from 4 to 9 p.m. They're all very real things. And I think that I think in this role, I don't have a ton of influence to be able to make those.
That's
But
fine.
if you have questions about them, this committee, I'm happy to help run them down internally and see how we can do to address those concerns from the general public as well.
Okay, what we need is how to respond to those questions. And for example, I mean, here again is the famous example of one, a couple that wanted to put in an electric heat pump, space heating, couldn't do it because it was, $30,000 because they had to upgrade not just the service panel, but something out in the street, if we're talking transformers, all that stuff. So if there's a way we can address those concerns and say how they're going to be dealt with, that's what we need to know, because we're on board with renewable energy, in case you haven't guessed.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Quick question. Are you going to address just reliability around power purchasing and not transmission?
That's the goal for today. Yes.
Okay, okay. And so that kind of plays back into putting solar on roofs and net metering, et cetera, net energy metering, et cetera. So do you want to say more about that, or is that something we can circle back on another time?
I think we can table it. I think the intent for the meeting today is really to just get your feedback on what would be most helpful over the coming year, and really just to outline kind of what this looks like from MCE's perspective and the different players involved, and hopefully generate some questions too. So to that end, what we're looking at here. Yeah.
Is there anybody else that had any other questions? It's a tough one for Martin. Okay. Thank you.
I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I think one of the things to outline here is that energy is a very highly regulated industry in the state of California. I forget which committee member it was, but mentioned Texas earlier. We have a very different, structure in the state of California. And MCE is required to report to a number of different authoritative bodies, just like PG&E is, and just like the other investor-owned utilities and CCAs across the state. So now that you're familiar a little bit with resource adequacy and how MCE plans long-term, I wanted to introduce some of these different parties here. First is the California Energy Commission, which is the state's primary energy policy and planning agency. And they play a really critical role in providing access to data on energy production. So what we do at MCE is submit periodic load forecasts to the CEC, and they adjust those values to accurately forecast what the energy demand actually looks like in our communities. The next agency is the California Public Utilities Commission. They do a lot of different areas of work, but one of the things they do is take those reports from the Energy Commission and really crunch those numbers in a way to determine what the long-term energy demand is for the state. And then they tell us on an annual basis how much resource adequacy we need to procure in our power purchasing to be able to meet demand. And last, and I think this is where some of the questions about transmission planning specifically would be helpful to address, is the CAISO. But they develop the resource adequacy requirements for the state.
Lots of people don't.
Excuse me. California Independent System Operator. And so how do I break this down? So the CAISO, they don't own transmission infrastructure, but they are the independent body that is meant to oversee that really from a physics standpoint, I would say, to be able to say we have X amount of demand in a community. How do we meet that demand? And how do we ensure that the lines are safe and that energy is being transmitted in a way that can actually serve those customers? So,
CAISO is responsible for making decisions about load shedding or brownouts or managing statewide grid.
they coordinate the movement of wholesale electricity throughout the state of California. Yes. Thank you for the reminder to not use acronyms, or at least clarify what the
So
acronyms
easy
mean.
because there's so many TLAs.
No, I appreciate it. I think the takeaway here is that it's a very highly regulated industry, right? And all these agencies and MCE coordinate with one another to ensure that demand is being met for our communities. So those are some of the authoritative bodies that go into this.
I think that's the talking point, what you just said. Like if we were to include that in some of our materials as we engage with the community. That would be it for me.
Great.
Was that,
And from the point of view of, you know, supply versus delivery, the CAISO deals with PG&E on two levels. One is where are you going to get the energy you need and are you going to get it? And in their case, also, do you have the infrastructure to deliver it? And that's not something that MCE is concerned with. You're just another provider on the PG&E grid.
Well, it's certainly something that we're concerned with, but I think
Sure.
we are not the agency that's looking at that from a statewide perspective. Martin, that would be the California Independent System Operator.
Right, because MCE doesn't run power lines.
Correct.
Right.
MCE provides generation of power.
Yes.
PG&E is responsible for the transmission lines.
And for generation of their own that they're going to do.
Correct. Correct.
And you're both, all of you are governed by these bodies,
Yes.
and CAISO is one of the puppeteers, the puppet masters.
That's one way to put it. Yes.
Yeah.
And MCE only deals with electricity and not with the gas lines. So
Indeed.
gas and electricity and electric does both and has the infrastructure for both, but MCE is just procuring the green electrons to put on the state's wires. Is that right?
That is right. Okay.
Did you have more?
Nope.
That's so cool. Okay. Thank you. We're just really trying to slow ourselves down because there's so many people that are asking about this.
No, I appreciate it. And like I said, I mean, like the spirit of being here is to be collaborative. So if things don't make sense, I welcome that feedback and I want to improve upon things with you all so that this does make sense for your community when you do get questions.
Yeah, I have one question. How is NEM 3 net energy metering 3.0 going to influence Marin Clean Energy and your customers?
So we have our own net energy metering tariff that is overseen by our board of directors. And I think for the purposes of the recent decision made at the CPUC regarding NEM, I would need to get you some specific talking points. I'm not going to be able to do it justice today, unfortunately, in a way that makes sense, but I'm committed to getting that for you all.
Maybe I'll add an anecdote to my question. As I understood that there's a window of time now who makes the decision on net energy metering 3.0 recently made a decision that they're going to the guillotine comes down on April 13th. And so applications that are in, complete and processed before April 13th will be grandfathered into any net energy metering 2.0. So it's January now, April 13th, think tax time.
Yeah.
An application takes a month to go back and forth, give yourself 6 weeks. So for those people that have interest in being not subject to net energy metering 3.0 pricing, which most people believe is going to change the payback period on rooftop solar from 4 to 8 to 10 years. They may want to consider getting an application. It will be an investment. And then on the backside, you get 3 years to exercise on it. So you don't, so if your application is deemed complete, it's in before a close of business on April 12th. You then have a window of 3 years to deploy it. Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
Isn't that cool? So I think if
I'm
that,
gonna do this.
yeah. So, so I just think that, if you could bring back some better understanding about your net energy metering protocols for our customers so we can help, because this is so complicated for people.
It was not something I was prepared to speak to today.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah,
But I can get that information for you.
okay, thank you.
And we're prepared to really partner with you to explain this as quickly as possible, as clearly as possible, so that as many people as possible can take advantage of this very short window of time and understand why time is of the essence for them. So thank you. We look forward to that.
Some people ask me if I've got solar, if I've got a battery, do I need to use MCE generated power? What do you tell them?
Well, I would say yes. There are still points in the day where they're drawing power from the grid and the sun is not shining all the time and the battery is not providing backup power all the time. So in those periods, like we've probably seen over the past couple of weeks here where it's been cloudy and your solar is not producing at an optimal level, they're still drawing that power. And so in that comes a choice of where you want that power to come from. And so you can choose MCE and be 60 to 100% renewable, or you can opt out and remain with PG&E's 49% renewable service. That choice is on the customer. But I think this committee would agree that there are some benefits to choosing the more renewable option. And that's a choice that we want to enable in the community for those customers that do have solar.
For the lay people, where does your power come from? Where does your renewable power come from?
Yeah, it comes from a number of different sources. For Deep Green, it's coming from 50% wind and 50% solar located in the state of California. For our light green product, it's primarily coming from wind and solar as well, but we also use large hydroelectric power, which makes up a large percentage of our power portfolio. And that, for the purposes of this committee, is greenhouse gas free. It's not emitting anything into the atmosphere, but it's not considered renewable by one of the committees that you see here, the California Energy Commission, right? So it's primarily renewable sources in California, but also throughout the Pacific Northwest.
Is the hydro the other 30% of light green? Is that what you're saying?
Hydro is 37%, I want to say,
Of the 70% or of the gap of?
the 100% that makes up everything
okay.
within light green. So it's 61%, 60% renewable,
30% of that.
37% doesn't count towards being renewable, and it's making up a large extra portion
Got it.
of that power.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then I was just going to say for the solar piece and the April 13th deadline, we should be thinking through how we met, with talking points from you, but also other items there so that we can be very clear on what the steps are as a handout for anything that we do.
And on our website.
And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be corrected. It's because I'm just. I'd love
No,
to be wrong.
April 13th.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we've got some other agenda items. Was there anything else? Did anybody on the public have a question?
Well, the presentation isn't quite
Okay, I'm sorry.
over. Yeah, so
Sorry.
Part 3.
maybe we
Okay.
can get through this more expeditiously, but I did want to talk.
I didn't retain all the intro slide.
It's
thank
no,
you.
it's been a lot of info, so it's all good. We also wanted to talk about opportunities for Corte Madera. I think we've outlined quite a bit today, and we can follow up on those. But some of the ones that I had in mind and wanted to hear some feedback from this committee on are the different customer programs that we have that folks might be able to enroll in. Just setting the stage a bit here. 84% of all customers in Corte Madera are already on MCE service. We've talked a little bit about Deep Green, and how 5% of folks are enrolled in that, with an anticipated jump because of that policy change to go to Deep Green as the standard service. We have about 6% of customers here enrolled in California Alternative Rates for Energy, or CARE. That's that bill relief program that provides some discount. And about 2% of all customers are enrolled in Medical Baseline, which is a program that gives folks with qualified medical equipment advance notice of a PSPS event or other shutoffs. So a great way for folks with medical needs to be informed of energy choices, or of energy changes that are happening in the community. So that's just a snapshot. But what I really wanted to highlight is some of the different programs that I think, as a committee, in addition to all the great work that it sounds like you want to do with messaging and communications, we could be doing to impact emissions reductions here in Corte Madera. So we offer at MCE a pretty robust workplace and multifamily charging opportunity for sites that want to install electric vehicle infrastructure. There's up to $3,500 in rebates per port for MCE customers. So if, typically a charger has 2 ports on it, if a customer is Deep Green in Corte Madera, they'd be eligible for up to $7,000 for the purposes of that charging station. That can also be coupled here in Marin with rebates from the Transportation Authority of Marin, for up to $3,000 per port. And so you're looking at about $14,000 that are eligible towards the installation of electric vehicle charging stations. That includes technical assistance as well. So I would, if there are any ideas that this committee has as to where charging stations might go, know that there are rebates and dedicated staff time at MCE to help out with the installation and siting of that infrastructure. Another program that I want to highlight too is our energy efficiency and demand response programs. These are really important for the purpose of when we do have flex alerts, when the grid is constrained, when people are cranking their ACs in late August and September, and we're having heat waves. How do we not only help the state of California maintain power throughout those times, but how do we also incentivize customers to shift that load away from those peak periods? So we have a number of different marketplace programs that provide incentives in the form of, I believe it's bill credits, to shift that load away. And if there are commercial sites within Corte Madera that you think might be of interest for that program, I'm definitely happy to partner with you on that. And then last but not least, we do have a strategic energy management program. What this means is it's a behavioral change program that says, how can we at MCE work with our vendors to identify what are the low cost, no capital improvement type things that you can be doing in your facilities to reduce energy. I think that there's a saying that some of us might have heard within the sustainability space, but the cleanest energy is the energy you don't use. And so if we can encourage energy efficiency measures just by quick behavioral change things with facilities and operations people, that's something that we want to do. We've seen that participants in our program have saved up to 15% on their energy bills over the course of a year. And if you're a large customer, that ends up being a sizable savings for you in your facility. So those are 3 programs. On the residential side of things, and I think we can tailor this to meet the needs of folks in Corte Madera, but there's a number of different programs. There is a heat pump water heater program available through Bayren here in Marin. It's a $1,000 rebate, can be stacked with an additional $1,000 rebate through Electrify Marin. That is paid to contractors to help offset the cost of a new heat pump. These are, you've seen a lot in the paper about, the need to replace gas heaters and kind of what that looks like. And this is one of the real tangible ways that we can do that. So there are rebates available for folks that want to go and make electrification measures in their home.
Can I just clarify something you said? It's the rebate for the consumer, and you said something about the contractor.
It
just means
goes-
that you can provide, you can use the money to pay for the appliance or the service.
So it's not a grant in that sense. We're not giving away $1,000 to the consumer to purchase a heat pump. It goes directly to the contractor to
Ah.
offset that sticker price that you would be seeing. Yeah.
And water heaters and
HVAC?
thank you. Both.
Since you jumped in with a question.
Sorry.
No, that's great. If there's some concern that as these rebates or these programs come in, is the customer going to see I'm sorry, thank you. Is the customer going to see the benefit, or is the installer going to just increase his costs? Is there a way to control that? Yeah. Here's $2,000. Well, are you just going to jack up the price of your service to install the heat pump?
Only if there's collusion and everybody does.
Yeah, it's just something that
No,
yeah, it's a question.
I appreciate that. I would need to check with my counterparts at the county to see how they vet the different contractors and what are the mechanisms in place to ensure that doesn't happen. I don't know off the top of my head, but I would want to be able to provide that to you all.
As a savvy contractor might think that way, right?
Let's hope not, but yeah.
Yeah.
Just following on that, my understanding is that the county, the sustainability team has been really working to bring on and train and vet contractors in the county. And, several years ago, they had like 4, and now there's like 44. I'm kind of pulling those numbers out of the air, but a significant increase in the number of contractors who do this work who are vetted. But I think that it's a legitimate concern if there isn't sort of a baseline where we all have knowledge of what what these pieces of equipment cost and what the average installation labor cost might be, that some people could be taken advantage of by less scrupulous contractors. And I would hope that there's none of those people, but I think that it's something that that should be, we need to be able to reassure people that it's on the up and up. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Mark Chavarria, I think I'm pronouncing the name correctly, is the guy at Electrify Marin that we're going to have him on our website if the committee approves this. Do you interact with him?
Yes.
And if we were to give one person for our folks to go to, it would probably be Mark, because in the case of a non-MCE customer, you wouldn't be able to work with them. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that's one of the qualifications to get that rebate, that it does need to be an MCE customer. I would recommend not reaching out to Mark directly, but would point you in the direction of the Electrify Marin page on the county sustainability team website. I believe they have an intake form there.
Yes, and because the equipment requirements across all these programs vary, it can become very confusing. You have to be on everybody's list to have that piece of equipment, in order to qualify. So the devil's in the details of all this. Yeah, and that's why one of our objectives is to make conversion as easy as possible for our citizens. So they don't have to unwind an orange, to get there, or an onion, that, they can just, it's very straightforward about what you need to do when you need to do it. Because otherwise you get into multiple rabbit holes and it gets very distressing. And then, yeah, so that's a concern of ours. Be aware of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's go back in. Thanks.
Okay. So we also have a number of really great multifamily programming available as well. Geared towards affordable housing and low income family and tenants. So there's a number of different home energy savings measures that those folks can take, ranging from, again, going back to that theme of the cleanest energy is the energy we don't use, energy efficiency measures. So these are things like something as simple as installing double pane windows at your multifamily properties, having proper insulation, ensuring there's not drafts under the doors. We have vendors that do that type of work, and something that we really want to encourage, because it really is a way for folks to lower their electricity bill and also lower the amount of energy demand that they're using. So helping create things in a more sustainable way, holistically as well, through energy efficiency. If there are, yes, committee member.
Replacing windows in a building would be the property owner.
Correct.
How do we work with that split incentive between tenants and owners?
It's a great question. And we do have dedicated staff that work specifically on multifamily now at MCE that I don't think, Leslie, you've had the chance to meet.
I haven't, no.
But it's a new thing that I think we're thinking about with that very issue in mind. Last but not least, we have a number of different income qualified EV rebates towards the purchase of electric vehicles. So folks can get up to $3,500 per vehicle. And that's stackable with a number of different state and federal incentives as well. So on our website, there's actually a flow chart that explains quite nicely how folks can identify those different rebates based on their income criteria. So know that those resources are available as well. And if that's of interest to the committee, we can help get that word out into the community. So with that, we've reached the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any additional questions you might have. And again, like truly, like I want to be a resource for you all. So if there's things that come up maybe later, you have my contact information, feel free to reach out, and want to work with you all on how we can address our twin goals of reducing GHG emissions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any last questions or comments besides extending our gratitude here?
No, I wanted to say thank you for going through all of that. And I think we need to think about refocusing efforts on deep green adoption, not just for new contracts, but try to go in on that again, knowing that it won't be till later in the decade where it will transition to 100%. So I guess I would say that we need to add that. We can discuss that, Phoebe, but we need to add that to our energy action item.
What were our goals internally for deep green adoption?
Well, it's funny when you see 5.4%, I can think back to the first meeting as a committee, and in my head, I was like, that should be 50%, like $5 a month, no big deal. And we did a little promotion around this, banners around town. Martin did newsletters, school newsletters. We didn't get one opt up. So it just means that we're going to have to continue to push it and maybe get creative in the ways we do that, like email chains, or I don't know.
Does the town have the ability to adopt a user tax via the utility on energy, just like the water district does? The more you use, the more you pay. I think it goes up exponentially.
I don't think so. No, I mean, like we're setting the generation rates through our board of directors. I mean, you do have a representative from Corte Madera on our board of directors. So I guess in that sense, you could propose something like that, but I don't know what it would look like specifically at a municipal level, like, because our rates are set across the board for all of our different communities.
So the municipality can.
No.
No, I don't think so.
And the utility use tax is based on the level of use.
Right.
And so we're a very small county to begin with, we don't have a lot of industry. So a UUT here would be really controversial and challenging to pass and not that helpful. It works better when you've got massive industry. So different parts of the Bay look to that as a way to help fund programs. But I think I think it's pretty complicated to do that. I don't think a board or even a town can just go ahead and do a UUT. I think it has to be on the ballot.
Great point. That would also be regulated by all of the different bodies we have talked about today.
And it has to go on the ballot.
You know,
Who is the,
we go on the ballot.
Mhm.
And what was the thinking behind that? In terms of,
Just to try to conserve energy by
I see.
Market
taxing
forces.
high use
Yeah.
like the water district does.
Yeah.
you mentioned that a Corte Madera resident is on the board. Can you share that name?
Eli.
Oh, Eli's on the board.
Yeah, so the way that it works for our board of directors is each municipality has the opportunity to appoint a member of their city council or board of supervisors or whatever governing body they use in their jurisdiction to our board. So yeah, Councilmember Beckman serves on our board.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions, comments? Martin, it's hard to jump in sometimes.
No, that's fine. I think, well, Sebastian, maybe the third time we hear all this, we'll get it. I don't know, but I appreciate your efforts.
I think it was a more nuanced presentation this time, Martin. I think in previous times that I've met, it's been really just an overview of MCE and like how we can do co-branded messaging campaigns. And while those
Right.
things are important, I think I wanted to dive into some more robust subject matter with
Yes.
committee member tonight. So I appreciate you going out on a limb and hearing me on some of this stuff, and apologies if I didn't have all the answers, but like this is how we work together to achieve these things, by asking some of these hard questions. So
Well, I think, and I think if you're aware now that we have, what you've heard our concerns, what about the grid, which isn't your deal, but, we just need to have answers so that we can move on to, instead of getting stymied by questions like, gosh, we don't know, what happens when the wind stops blowing. We need to know what happens when the wind stops blowing, so that we can respond to those questions and get people off the dime to make the changes we need. That's why. Thanks.
understood. Thank you.
One other thought, when we were in front of the council and advocating as a committee for the reach codes to be more robust, to hopefully adopt all of them, but it became a much more sequenced approach, which was fine. There were some really important questions being asked by some of the council members, and I would we can Adam and Eli and Councilmember Beckman. I would love for the council to have a presentation like this, because I think they need to also understand, as they go through this process with reach codes, what's possible, and that partnership that we have as the town of Corte Madera, as the enabling jurisdiction that allows all of us to become MCE customers as well. But that municipal piece is really important for them to understand that relationship with MCE. So hopefully we can schedule something like that soon for the council to get a real clear picture and ask their questions also.
And they will have the same questions that I've been asking, because that's where I got them. Thanks.
You're forewarned.
Thank you. I would also say that the utility planning is a critical component of that as well.
Mhm.
And I know in some of our other communities in Marin, PG&E did provide letters of support for some of the reach code adoptions. So
Oh, interesting.
something for this committee to look into as well. I know in San Rafael, they submitted a letter of support for all electric reach code adoption.
Who did? PG.
PG&E.
Fabulous.
We need to find out how we can ask them for that.
We got that.
I think Adam is bringing up that was in one of the agenda packets when that was brought to council, PG&E's letter of support.
Good.
Yeah, for new construction.
Oh,
Okay,
Oh, we got that.
lame. Okay, anything else?
Nothing else other than I'm here. It's great to meet those of you that I haven't met before. and great to reconnect with other members of the committee as well. Let me know how I can help. Genuinely.
Thank you very much. You showed up early. You stayed a little bit late. You answered some hard questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you so
I
much.
didn't answer all the questions, but
Yeah.
I tried my best, and that's all I can hope to do.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Should we move on?
Yeah, we want to ask for public comment. just
Oh, and, there
before
is
we close
public
this
comment?
item. We do not have public comment, but just
Okay,
for the
thank you.
record. We did
Yeah,
look for public comment. We don't have any emailed comments and we don't have anyone online. So yes, thank you again, Sebastian. Really appreciate you being here.
sure. We'll just take a 2-minute break so we can maintain a quorum.
Oh, well, you'll
Or
still
you
have a
want to step
quorum.
away?
I'm just gonna step away to talk to him for just a moment.
Okay.
You'll still have 4.
Okay,
You're good.
That's good.
Right?
okay. You can multitask too. I know you
No,
can.
no.
Should we move on? Okay. Discussion and possible direction to staff regarding adding content pages to the Climate Action Committee website. There's an attachment, item 4B. Is this, Martin, is this something you're going to lead us through?
I had asked Phoebe to lead it because she's there. But I'm, certainly happy to jump in if needed to chat about it. Can we do that?
Yes, definitely. I'll give an overview and then Martin, feel free to jump in if you have any additional comments. So this
Good.
is the proposed website changes that's based on the version that Martin drafted and that you all saw at the last meeting. So I took that content and put it into, tried to sort of recreate the formatting of the website so you all could see what it might look like. And so this is the current Climate Action Committee page. And so that's all staying the same. What's proposed to be changed here is the sidebar. And currently there's a list of other committee web pages and different pages on the Corte Madera website there. So the proposal is to add these 3 new pages. And the first page here would be an overview of emissions in Corte Madera. So there's the latest inventory, and then some of the climate impacts that we're experiencing here and a link to the adaptation assessment. The second page would be a page on what the town is doing, what the town's climate actions have been and will be. So there's the climate action plan there, and this would be a embedded video of Christina O'Rourke's presentation to this committee that summarizes the climate action plan. And then there's a section on green buildings and the actions the town's taken there. And I added the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership in this portion as well. And the idea is that this page would be updated as I'm going through the climate action plan and we identify other actions that have been completed. Those would be added to this page. So it's more of a complete picture of the town's actions. And then the third page is the resources for residents. And I organized those into the sort of general resources. And then what Martin had proposed were the home electrification and green transportation categories. So those are the resources that Martin had found for those. And then adding also some additional categories down here just to match the sections that are in the climate action plan. We also have the waste reduction and water conservation sections with resources there. So this item is looking for your feedback on this draft. If there's anything that you'd like to change, even if it's just a wording sort of, you want to word it a little differently. If there's any resources you want to have added, and then hopefully we'd love to have a motion from you all to directing staff to implement this. And if there's any changes you want to make, that can be part of the motion, or you could direct Martin, for example, to work directly with staff to come to a final version. And if I say final, but it's always open for revisions. If it gets put on the website and there's something you want to add, it can definitely be changed in the future.
What would a reasonable refinement schedule be? Like every 2 months, every 3 months, every year? What would a reasonable we don't want this, I personally wasn't thinking this was going to be, a constant amendment, but what would a reasonable expectation be for update?
That's a good question. I haven't yet been trained on how to update the website. Once I am, and I think it'll be fairly easy for me to make additions. But yeah, if they were sort of consolidated, that would be helpful, but I can also sort of collect those revisions as you send them to me and then just implement them all at once. So there's some options there.
One of the advantages of our internet, of our search engine located here, company located here in the Bay Area, starting with the G, is issue a beta and then refine as we go. So don't try to get it perfect the first time, but just get it out there so that we have something to learn from. I'd be an advocate of doing that rather than cranking on this and because but
That was my intention.
Yeah.
To say, look, as long as we're not making any mistakes with this thing,
Yeah.
get it up there.
Mhm.
This thing should be updated frequently, not in terms of revamping and, adding animations and stuff, but in terms of information, content. I'm going to use that word again, that we need content, and the content needs to be current, relevant, and updated. So, when we don't want users going to the site and finding, stuff from last month and there's nothing now. So I would argue that we need to have updates happen as frequently as they need to, in terms of adding to the existing profile and what the site is. Major overhauls, that's a big, that's different. If we want to start taking on adaptation or stuff like that, that's obviously a bigger deal. So that's what I would see it. And I think we should aim to get this thing up ASAP. Anyway, that's my opinion.
A question for you: how much of these links are static, and how many of them are going to APIs that update on a regular basis?
Fortunately, the most important one, which I believe is the what is that the one that has the links to all the sites for rebates and stuff.
The switch is on.
Switch is on. Thank you very much. That one takes care of a lot of that, so we don't have to make sure that we go through and update others. But I know that what I would do is I would go to that site frequently, once a week probably, and just make sure there's nothing wrong or outdated on it, and then that much we can handle. I hope that answers.
That's for me.
Yeah. I would say get it up as fast as possible. I'm thrilled to see this. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Phoebe, and anybody else behind the scenes that's been helping with this to put this together. Thrilled to have this. Thank you. The one thing I would suggest, Martin and Phoebe and all of us, is that we have on our homepage for the committee a hot topic or a box that is, and it doesn't have to be there all the time, but a box that lives there and is visible when there is something that's really important that we want people to catch, whether it's an update that we have, or it's a meeting or something they should take advantage of or be aware of that's timely. I think that would be helpful to people, so they don't have to dig for it.
I would encourage anybody who has that kind of stuff to provide you guessed it, content, and we'd make it happen. At this point, I don't think we've ever rejected anything because we have too much content. So if there's something hot that needs to be on there, let's do it. No problem. That also is a segue into what we want to do for the next Chronicles, but that's another topic.
Yeah, I was just saying that this would be something that would live on our homepage and would be utilized when there is a take action.
Yes,
That we realize that people, we want them to pay attention to,
right.
as an item, not as a full report or something.
Fine.
For the town to give us feedback on clicks.
Oh, yeah.
I do believe that our communications manager was able to track that, although I think there was some question as to whether it was possible to separate, internal clicks versus external, because I know I'm on the website all the time clicking on everything. So I'm not sure if there's been a solution to that, but I can check in on whether it's possible.
I've had to deal with Mike and Lorena on this before. It's MailChimp. And so at a summary level, we get a response of, how many clicks was on this. And of course, if there's all 5 of us, well, we know who that is. But they do have the ability to go in and find out who by email address has been doing this. That, of course, is something we can't disseminate to the committee because it's all the confidential email addresses that the town has. So we could probably ask specific questions if we were really interested in that. But the first thing to do would be to get responses as to the click rates in general. And for the last Chronicles, when I was in there, Phoebe, wasn't Mike saying that, they could tell there was a lot of action on the utility rates issue, that there was a lot of clicking on that. So that was one thing that did happen.
So one thing to just point out is MailChimp would measure engagement in the newsletter, not, I think, the site.
Not the
Right.
website.
Correct.
However, I'm sure it exists, and I'm sure you can subtract the domain and get the number. I think click-through rate's important, but I just think traffic in general is important. Like, how much time do we want to put into this versus how much traffic is going here? And I think as we get into the community more and more, we should watch that number. And when we start hitting a really great, whatever we deem that to be, then we can start tweaking it. I have a couple. First off, I want to say I love it. I love that you guys put this together, and I too would say let's motion it and get it live. And then I think as time goes on and more traffic hits the site, we could make the actions even more apparent. So whatever we put in our one sheeter at tables, like take these 5 actions, we should make it really clear on the site for the community. And maybe that is the sidebar. It's like actions you can take. But again, I think these are all things that we can continue to tweak based on the traffic.
Yes.
The other thing I was going to say is if we could create a tiny URL so that we can make it really easy for people to get to it, that would be fantastic.
And a QR code?
Yeah.
Yeah, can definitely do that.
Put the URL on the bottom of my email.
Yeah, great. But thank you, because this is not easy. And I know we've talked about it for a long time. So thanks to both of you for making it a reality.
Do we have any public comment?
Good question. I do not see any public comment.
Seeing none, do I have a move to approve as is?
Motion. I make a motion to approve.
And I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Next item. Okay.
Oh. What's this? I actually, so this was on community outreach. And just a quick update here, just a few minutes. So Phoebe and I met to discuss the different events and what would be needed. And we are going to try to do the January farmers market, and we have a volunteer that may join us. And then there are other events listed on this engagement one sheeter, but Phoebe and I are chatting through what other types of events we can put on there through the year. The chamber continues to come up, and I know that we've talked internally about the chamber event and more to come there in terms of how we engage that group. I've got the presentation now, so I think in the near term, I'll work to refine that content. The other piece was identifying groups, and then the advocacy pre-zone, the talking points, which Phoebe is working through, I think. So that's just a quick update and more to come there, but I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, no, you summarized it well. It's sort of the ball's in my court now. I've got some review work to do and yeah, looking forward to that tabling event.
We need to take public comment on that or not? There's no action.
Yes, technically we should take public comment on each item and there are no public comments, but thank you for checking.
Cool. D. Discussion of recent rate increases for natural gas and electricity and implications for town and residences. I think I put this on the agenda just to see if any, as a discussion item, as an open discussion item. Is anybody hearing anything, any concerns? And I put this on our published agenda to get it on our published agenda so that others can see that we're really concerned about it. And so I wanted to open up for discussion. Is anybody hearing?
Is this about the poisonous natural gas? Is that what the?
No, it's about a rate
The
hike.
rates, okay, never mind, sorry.
Not an expert, but PG&E transmits the gas and charges a rate for that transmission. They are required to buy gas so that they don't have a supply issue. The cost that they've been buying gas for that storage has been banging on the bottom for a long time. And it took off logarithmically. So customers in Corte Madera, especially people that don't have means to handle a large cost to their gas increase, are going to be seeing the pass through of the cost of the supply of the cost that PG&E pays for gas passes right through to those customers. And so I was concerned, and I want to just keep this on our, this is a sign for the benefits of decarbonizing. Because this is a sign of a stranded asset where people that are going to be subject to these incredible volatile markets. And it's not PG&E's fault. As a state provider of the service, they're incentivized to reduce demand of gas. So it's kind of, from my perspective, PG&E gets paid more or incentivized more when people spend less and they pass through high rates. So they earn more when people use less gas and they pass through the high rates. It's kind of this insidious condition, and it's the reality of where we're at. And for some people that it doesn't matter if they pay $20 more, $30 more, $40 more for the gas bill. It's the people that have poorly insulated homes, fixed income people that are going to be hurt the most on this. So maybe we can urge council to be aware of this. Staff can be aware of it. I hope people were angry as hell about it. There's nothing this body can do about it. But I just want to raise it as an issue.
Yeah, well, I will say that Martin wrote a great article about this for the Corte Madera Chronicles, and we distributed it to the Age-Friendly Corte Madera group, and we got a lot of good feedback from them that they really appreciated having that information, especially the information about the programs, the bill relief programs that are available. So that is something that this committee did and that was helpful to residents. So
thank you, Martin. Is there anything more people? Is there anybody people want to add? We've got staff here. Okay. So we can make some noise because this is just for, it shouldn't get people to see the benefits of avoiding exposing themselves to this by getting off fossil gas. Item 5, updates and reports. This item provides staff and committee members an opportunity to briefly report on current developments and make announcements. The committee members may not take action on or engage in discussion on these items, but committee members may request that staff report back to the committee on any item or request that the item be taken on for a future agenda. Starting with staff.
Thank you. So two quick updates for you all. One is about a public comment period that's open for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. Has two proposed rule changes that are regulating nitrous oxide emissions from gas water heaters and furnaces. And so they're proposing to essentially lower the limit on nitrous oxide emissions to zero by, I believe, 2027 and 2030 for water heaters and then furnaces. So there's a public comment period that's open on these rule changes. It's open until February 6th. So I wanted to let the committee know in case anyone would like to write a public comment regarding those rule changes. And then second update is just a reminder that under the council's current resolution on public meetings, all committee members are required to be in person unless you have a health reason for being remote. And the Brown Act rules are going to be changing slightly in February. So I'll give you an update then on if anything's changing, but just a reminder that we are supposed to be in person. And that's all the staff update that I have. Adam, do you have any updates? All right.
Any comments on that?
I'm sorry, the first update you had, what was that, or what was the organization?
Sure, and I can send this out to the committee as well. It's the Bay Area Air Quality Management District.
Okay, thank you.
And it's their rules 9-4 and 9-6 that they are proposing changes to.
Thank you. I'd like to follow on that just briefly. I'm on a ad hoc group, part of an ad hoc group that's working to build support to pass these changes with Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And it will be voted on in, I think, March 15th by the commissioners. So our Marin County is represented by Supervisor Katie Rice, Marin County Supervisor Katie Rice. And there are, I think something like 24 commissioners representing counties and cities around the Bay. And it needs to pass by a majority, I think, not a super majority, but it's pretty contentious. And there is great support, and there's also those working against this. There's a lot of fear out there about the whole gas issue, the whole, yeah. So I think if I realize that we don't have time between now and February 6th to write a letter as a committee, but I can certainly share with Phoebe information that I have. If you would share that, or could share that with the committee members with respect to language that could be used if you wanted to contact Supervisor Rice or the entire commission for BACMED in support of the rule change.
Did we slide into item B?
Oh, no, I was just following up on what she said. I was just following up on what she said.
Yes, yeah, I believe I can send out that information.
I want to honor people's schedules. So any updates, reports from committee members? I'll be really brief. I think this is time for me to have an idea that I want to share. Is that I get a lot of questions from time to time about how do I understand the costs of decarbonizing. And I move around town, I get that question. Everybody I talk to, oh no, it's a federal committee. How much does it cost? Who can help me with that? And so I was thinking of sharing some thoughts with others about, could we harvest some work by Fairfax or other neighboring communities that have looked at this item? County committee. Sorry, thank you. Can we harvest the good work that's been done by others? And can we, since the housing stock in Corte Madera is fairly homogeneous, can we help the broad population that lives in those homes help to understand this? And instead of taking it on as a whole house decarbonization exercise, start with just hot water heat pumps.
Induction stoves.
Okay, my idea was just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Just start somewhere So we can help people understand as the cost curve of appliances goes down. We now have a 120 volt plug-in hot water heater that shouldn't require a permit. And we have the cost of gas going up. And so how can we help people, starting with one item, just how can they understand when those cost curves meet so they know when to push the green button and say, gosh, now's the time to switch. Because everybody talks to me about that. Everybody's looking for help with this because it's really complicated. And then we roll in discussion about rebates and other things. What are people's thoughts on that?
I would suggest that we add that to the future agenda item, because I think that's a worthwhile conversation around how we would build something like that. Because I think it's not just where it meets, but also lifetime value. Like, when does that pay off?
Yeah.
Like, we need to explain it. So
Mhm.
I would suggest we put it on a future agenda. The
In
next
the-
agenda.
In the meantime, between now and the next meeting, should that be something the policy committee could look at in our free time?
Sure, I'm game.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And work
Maybe
with you
maybe
guys.
We can talk about that and shape it a little bit.
Mhm.
Martin, you have any thoughts?
Just
Mark?
that this sounds like something we should be including in our communications when we get there.
Yeah.
No sense hiding it under a barrel,
No,
waiting for things to happen. So as soon as we have something on it that we can say, even the fact that we're looking into it.
Yeah.
Just, and sound somewhat cogent about it. That's good.
okay, so so we'll have that as a future agenda item?
Yes, that can be a future agenda item, and it would be great if the policy subcommittee wants to work on that. I can say from staff side, would be challenging to support that right now, a full development of the program, but definitely here to
We
answer
can dream,
questions and
we can dream big.
yeah.
Thank you for being honest on there too. We have a limited resources. Any ad hoc committee, subcommittee member report outs?
I had a number.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over.
You did.
Sorry,
It's okay.
my bad.
Really fast and won't belabor it at all. We can talk about it another time, but the legislative analyst, the California Legislative Analyst Office did an assessment of California's climate policies and their 2022 scoping plan update. And the short answer is all hat and no cattle. We have extraordinary aspirations in this state by 2030 and 2035, but we're not on track. And so I will share this via email. I'll give it to you, Phoebe. But it's something that I think we should keep in mind as we do our work. And then the other thing that's come up in the last week or so, and you're probably all aware of it, and I think, Martin, you mentioned this briefly, is the concern about banning gas. And just the word ban is probably the biggest issue. But there are about 10 states in the United States that have already legislated a ban on bans. A ban on legislation that bans things, right? So, which is really interesting. I don't know how they do that, but they did that. And
They did it all right.
they've done it, right? So,
And it's states that are
mostly
responsible for 31% of the commercial and residential gas have outlawed bans on it. So yes, there's a Standard & Poor's article on it. Yeah.
right. So I've been kind of rattling that cage for the last 10 days or so and posting about it and whatnot. But I think there's language around this ties into our reach codes, of course, as we talk more about that. The idea of banning is that right there, that's language that upsets people. And so how we talk about this and how we explain the reasons why, to your point, there's that cost incentive for so many of these things. There's also the health incentive. So I want us to be thoughtful about how we talk about these things in public and as a committee, but also that this is a huge flashpoint right now. It's all over the news nationally, and people are really upset because it sounds like the appliance police are going to come to their house and rip out their stove. And so we need to be nuanced and thoughtful about how people react to that concern. So I'm done.
Yes, we actually had a council member respond that way to something that was presented, that you're going to come take my gas stove. And yeah, I think we should ban the word ban. I think we should minimize gas utilization, whatever, but I agree 100%. We just step right into that bear trap. So agreed.
Any others? Any other individuals?
I'm done.
Any reports or updates from ad hoc committees, ad hoc subcommittees? Saying none. Future agendas, we'll work with Phoebe on getting our idea about information for our town members. Any other items? I guess I'm off agenda. Anything else? No. Anything else from the public?
Do not believe so.
Okay. Otherwise, I'll call this meeting as adjourned. 10 minutes late. It's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.